The arena was filled with 1,000,000 voices. Creatures from 100 different worlds screamed and cheered as blood stained the sand below. The great dome stretched across the sky like a metal heaven, and floating screens showed the battle to billions watching across the galaxy. Ho stood in the center of it all. His chest moved up and down as he breathed hard. His knuckles were cut and bleeding. At his feet lay the body of the champion, a creature twice his size with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. The champion was not dead, but he would never fight again. The crowd went silent for a moment. Then the human side of the arena exploded with noise. Humanity had won again. 12 victories in a row. No other species had ever done this. Ho did not smile. He did not raise his fist. He simply stood there waiting. He knew what came next. A voice boomed across the arena. The human is victorious. As is tradition, he may now claim his prize from the defeated empire. High above the sand, in a golden box reserved for royalty, the Empress Aura rose from her throne. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow under the lights. Her eyes were completely black, like 2 holes in her face. She looked down at Ho with disgust. "Human," she said, her voice cold. "You have defeated our champion. The Empire honors its agreements. You may choose your prize." She waved her long fingers and servants began to bring out the offerings. First came boxes of rare metals, enough to build 100 warships. Then came weapons of incredible power, shields that could stop any attack, engines that could cross the galaxy in days. Finally, a massive battlecruiser descended from the clouds, blocking out the sun for a moment. "All of this can be yours," the Empress said. "Choose wisely, human." Ho looked at the treasures. Any of them would make him rich beyond imagination. Any of them would bring great honor to Earth. But his eyes moved past all of it, searching for something else. He found it in the shadows. Behind the Empress, almost hidden from view, stood a small figure in chains. It was a young female, much smaller than the others of her kind. Her skin was so pale it was almost white, and her body looked thin and weak. She kept her head down, her silver hair covering her face. She was shaking. "Who is that?" Ho asked, pointing. The Empress laughed, a cruel sound that echoed across the arena. That is nothing. That is my daughter, a defect, a mistake. She was born wrong, too small, too weak. She is worthless." The crowd murmured. Some laughed. The princess shook harder at her mother's words, but she did not look up. Ho stared at her for a long time. He remembered his own childhood in the dark streets of Seoul. He remembered being called worthless. He remembered the cold nights when no one cared if he lived or died. "Her," he said loudly. "I choose her." The arena fell completely silent. Even the Empress stopped smiling. For a moment, no one could believe what they had heard. "You what?" the Empress asked. "I choose the princess. She is my prize." Whispers spread through the crowd like fire. This made no sense. Why would anyone choose a broken creature over ships and weapons and wealth? The human must be stupid. The human must be crazy. The Empress recovered quickly. A thin smile crossed her face. "Very well, take her. She is yours to do with as you please." She turned to her guards. "Remove her chains and give her to the human. I never want to see her again." The guards grabbed roughly and dragged her down to the arena floor. They threw her at Ho's feet like garbage. She fell hard on the sand and did not get up. Ho knelt beside her. She flinched away from him, expecting pain. Her whole body was covered in old scars and fresh bruises. She had been beaten many times. "Look at me," he said softly. She did not move. "Please," he said, "look at me." Slowly she raised her head. Her eyes were large and purple, filled with tears and fear. She was waiting for the first blow. She was waiting for cruelty. It was all she had ever known. Instead, Ho reached down and began to remove her chains. One by one, he unlocked them and let them fall to the sand. Her wrists were raw and bloody from the metal. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Her voice was small and broken. "Setting you free," he said. She stared at him like he was speaking a language she did not understand. "Free? I don't. I am your property now. You can do whatever you want with me." Ho shook his head. "I don't own people. Where I come from, that ended a long time ago." He stood up and offered her his hand. "You're free now. You can go anywhere you want, but I'm guessing you have nowhere to go, so you can stay with me until you figure things out. It's your choice." Looked at his hand like it was a trap. In her world, kindness was always a trap. People were only nice when they wanted something, when they wanted to hurt you in a different way. But something in his eyes was different. There was no hunger there, no cruelty, just a deep, tired sadness that she recognized. She had seen it in her own reflection many times. Slowly she took his hand. He helped her stand. She was so light, like she was made of paper. He could feel her bones through her skin. The Empress watched from above, her face unreadable. She had expected the human to choose something valuable. Instead, he had taken her greatest shame, her biggest failure. Good. Let him have the broken thing. It would bring him nothing but trouble. As Ho led out of the arena, the crowd parted for them. Some laughed at the foolish human. Others simply stared in confusion. But a few, just a few, looked at the small princess with something like hope. If a human could see value in something everyone else had thrown away, maybe there was something they were all missing. Walked beside Ho in silence. She did not know where he was taking her. She did not know what her future held. But for the first time in her life, she was not in chains. And for the first time in her life, someone had chosen her. Not because she was useful, not because she was powerful, but simply because she was there and she was suffering and he could not walk away. She did not understand it yet. She would not understand it for a long time. But that single moment of kindness would change the galaxy forever. Earth was loud, Earth was bright, Earth was terrifying. Pressed herself against the window of the transport ship as it descended through the clouds. Below her stretched a world of blue oceans, green forests, and cities that glowed like stars. She had never seen anything like it. "It's beautiful," she whispered without thinking. Ho looked at her from the pilot's seat. It was the first time she had spoken since they left the arena 3 days ago. "Wait until you see it up close," he said. "It's even crazier down there." He was right. When they landed in Seoul was overwhelmed. Humans were everywhere, running, shouting, laughing, fighting. Street vendors sold food that smelled strange and wonderful. Children played games in the alleys. Old men argued about things she did not understand. And the noise, so much noise, covered her ears and closed her eyes. Ho noticed immediately. He led her away from the crowd into a quieter street. "Sorry," he said. "I forgot how intense it can be. We'll go to my place. It's quieter there." His place was a small apartment above an old noodle shop. It was not fancy. The walls were thin and the furniture was worn, but it was clean and it was safe. "You can have the bedroom," Ho said. "I'll sleep on the couch." Stared at him. "You're giving me your room. You need it more than I do." She did not know how to respond. In the palace, she had slept in a cold cell in the basement. Servants had better rooms than her, and now this human, this stranger, was giving her his own bed. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" Ho sat down on the couch and sighed. "I don't want anything from you. I already told you you're free. You can leave whenever you want." "But that doesn't make sense. Nobody does things for free. There's always a price." He looked at her with those sad eyes again. "Maybe that's how it works where you come from, but here on Earth we try to be different. We don't always succeed, but we try." Days turned into weeks. Stayed in the apartment, watching and learning. She watched how humans treated each other. She watched Ho cook meals and offer them to neighbors. She watched children share toys even though they had so little. She watched strangers help strangers. It confused her deeply. One evening she finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why are humans so kind to each other? You fight wars, you hurt each other, but then you also sacrifice for each other. I've seen it. It makes no sense." Ho thought for a moment before answering. Humans are complicated. We're capable of terrible things, but we're also capable of love, and most of us believe that love is worth fighting for. "Love," repeated the word like it was foreign. "What is that?" He smiled sadly. "It's when you care about someone more than yourself, when their happiness matters more than yours, when you would rather suffer than see them hurt." Was quiet for a long time. "I don't think anyone has ever loved me," she said finally, "not even my mother." "Then your mother is a fool," Ho said simply, "because you're worth loving." Something stirred inside, a warmth she had never felt before. It scared her. As the weeks passed, she began to notice strange things happening inside her head. She could feel emotions that were not her own. When Ho was sad, she felt it like a weight on her chest. When the neighbors were happy, she felt lighter. One night she touched Ho's hand by accident and was flooded with images, his memories. She saw him as a child, alone and hungry. She saw him fighting in the streets to survive. She saw him join the military because it was the only way out. She saw all the people he had lost. She pulled her hand back, gasping. "What's wrong?" he asked. I saw your memories, your pain, I felt it." Ho's eyes widened. "You're a telepath." "I don't know, maybe. It never worked before, but something is changing inside me." He did not seem afraid. Instead, he seemed thoughtful. They are supposed to have telepathic abilities, but most of them suppress it because they consider emotions a weakness. "My mother said my powers were broken like everything else about me." "Maybe they weren't broken," Ho said gently. "Maybe they were just waiting for a reason to wake up." 2 nights later, the assassins came. Was asleep when she felt something wrong. A cold presence outside the apartment, killing intent. She had felt it before in the palace when her mother's guards had beaten her. "Ho!" she screamed. He was already awake, a gun in his hand. The door exploded inward and 3 assassins rushed in. They were tall and fast, their bodies enhanced for killing. Ho fought like a demon. He shot the first one in the chest and broke the second one's neck with his bare hands. But the third one was too quick. Its blade found Ho's stomach. He fell. Watched in horror as blood pooled on the floor. More assassins were coming through the window. 4 more. 5. "Run," Ho gasped, clutching his wound. "Get out of here." But did not run. Something inside her broke open. All the fear, all the pain, all the rage she had kept locked away her entire life came flooding out. She felt it gather in her mind like a storm. And then she screamed. It was not a normal scream. It was a telepathic wave that hit the assassins like a wall. They grabbed their heads and collapsed. Their minds shattered under the force of her power. When it was over, fell to her knees, exhausted. But she crawled to Ho's side and pressed her hands against his wound. "Stay awake," she begged. "Please don't leave me." He looked up at her with fatting eyes. "You saved me," he whispered. "You stupid, brave girl, you saved me." "Someone had to," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me first." She called for help. The neighbors came running. They took Ho to a hospital where human doctors worked through the night to save his life. Waited outside the room for 12 hours. She did not eat. She did not sleep. She just sat there praying to gods she did not believe in. When the doctor finally came out and told her that Ho would live, she collapsed with relief. That night, sitting beside his hospital bed, she made a decision. She was done being weak. She was done being afraid. She had power inside her, real power. And there were people in the galaxy who needed help, just like she had needed help. Ho had shown her what strength really meant. It was not about muscles or weapons. It was about protecting the people you cared about. She would learn to fight. She would learn to lead. And one day she would make her mother pay for all the suffering she had caused. But first, she would stay by Ho's side until he recovered, because that was what you did for the people you loved. And was finally beginning to understand what that word meant. Ho healed slowly. The wound had been deep, and even with advanced medicine, his body needed time to recover. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital and another month resting at home. During that time, never left his side. She brought him food. She changed his bandages. She read to him from human books when he could not sleep, and every day she asked him the same question. "Teach me to fight." Every day he gave her the same answer, "No." "Why not?" she demanded one evening. "I need to learn. I need to become stronger. My mother will send more assassins. Next time I might not be able to stop them." Ho shook his head. "You're not built for combat. Your bones are fragile. Earth's gravity is already hard on your body. If you train the way humans do, you could break. Then find a different way to train me. There must be something I can do." He looked at her for a long moment. He saw the fire in her purple eyes, the determination. She was not the same frightened creature he had led out of the arena. Something had changed inside her. "I can't train you," he said finally, "but I know someone who can." General Sung was an old man with a face and a sharp mind. He had commanded Earth's outer fleet for 30 years and had never lost a battle. He was also Ho's former commander and the closest thing he had to a father. When Ho brought to meet him, the old general studied her carefully. "So this is the princess everyone is talking about," he said. "The one who killed 5 assassins with her mind." Lowered her head. "I didn't mean to kill them. I just wanted to protect Ho." "That's exactly what makes you dangerous," Sung said with a hint of approval. "You don't fight for glory. You fight for people. That's rare." He walked around her slowly, examining her thin frame. "Ho is right. You can't fight like a human. Your body is too weak. But fighting isn't just about strength. It's about strategy. It's about making your enemies fight on your terms, not theirs." He pointed to her head. "Your power is up here. You're a telepath. That means you can know what your enemies are thinking before they do. You can sense their fear and use it against them. You can inspire your allies and break the will of your enemies without throwing a single punch." "So you'll teach me?" asked hopefully. "I'll teach you strategy, how to win wars without fighting whenever possible, how to move armies like pieces on a board, how to turn weaknesses into strengths." He looked at Ho. "You can teach her the physical stuff, but be careful, don't break her." And so's training began. Every morning she woke before sunrise. Ho taught her basic self-defense, nothing too intense, just enough to protect herself. He taught her how to move, how to fall safely, how to escape from holds. Her body was weak, but she was smart. She learned to use her small size as an advantage. In the afternoons, she studied with General Sung. He gave her books about famous battles throughout human history. She read about generals who won wars against impossible odds. She learned about tactics, logistics, and the psychology of combat. But the most important lessons came from practicing her telepathy. At first, she could only sense strong emotions nearby: fear, anger, joy. But as the months passed, her range grew. She learned to focus her power, to read specific thoughts when she concentrated. She learned to project her own emotions into other minds: calm, courage, confidence. "Your telepathy is not a weapon," Sung told her one day. "It's a tool for leadership. The greatest generals don't win because they're the strongest. They win because their soldiers believe in them, because they would rather die than let their commander down." Thought about Ho, about how he had risked his life for her, about how he had seen value in her when everyone else saw garbage. That was the kind of leader she wanted to be. 6 months into her training, news reached Earth that changed everything. The Empire had launched an attack on the Hollow, a peaceful species that lived on crystal worlds in the Outer Rim. The Hollow had no military. They were artists and philosophers who had never harmed anyone, and they were slaughtering them by the millions. Watched the broadcasts in horror. She saw cities made of beautiful crystal being reduced to dust. She saw hollow families running from soldiers, only to be cut down. She saw children crying over the bodies of their parents. And she saw her mother's face, smiling as she announced the cleansing of the hollow worlds. "This is what the Empire does," Empress Aura declared. "We remove the weak to make room for the strong. Any species that cannot defend itself does not deserve to exist." His hands shook with rage. Her mind reached out instinctively, searching for her mother across the vast distance of space. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tear that cruel smile off her mother's face. But she couldn't, not yet. She was still too weak, still too untrained. That night she found Ho on the roof of his building, staring at the stars. "I have to stop her," said quietly. "I have to stop my mother." He did not seem surprised. "I know. The galaxy won't help. They're all too afraid of the Empire, but I can't just watch while innocent people die." "So what are you going to do?" Took a deep breath. "I'm going to build an army. I'm going to find everyone who has suffered under my mother's rule, and I'm going to tear her empire down piece by piece." Ho was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to face her. "You know that's probably suicide, right? You're one person. The Empire has thousands of warships and billions of soldiers." "I know. And you're going to do it anyway." "I have to. If I don't, who will?" He studied her face in the starlight. She was not the same girl he had found in chains. She was still small, still fragile, but there was steel in her eyes now, a fire that would not be put out. "Then I'm coming with you," he said. "You don't have to. This isn't your fight." He smiled, a real smile, the first she had ever seen from him. "Yes, it is. The moment I chose you in that arena, I made it my fight. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself killed." Tears welled up in his eyes, but she blinked them away. "Thank you, Ho, for everything." "Don't thank me yet. We're probably going to die." "Maybe," she said, "but at least we'll die trying to make things better. That's worth something, isn't it?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it is." The next morning they began to plan. They would need ships. They would need weapons. Most importantly, they would need people willing to fight against impossible odds for a chance at freedom. Did not know if they would succeed, but she knew one thing for certain. She was done being a victim. She was done hiding. It was time to become something new. They started with nothing. A single stolen cargo ship, 3 human volunteers, and a princess that the galaxy had already forgotten. Stood in the cargo hold, looking at the small group of people who had agreed to join her impossible mission. Besides Ho, there was Jinai, a former military pilot who had lost her brother to the, and 2 mechanics named Ho Jin and Sung Min who had nothing left to lose. "This is it?" Jinai asked, looking around. "This is our revolution." "Everyone starts somewhere," replied. "The question is whether we're brave enough to keep going." Their first destination was the hollow refugee camps on the edge of civilized space. Millions of survivors had fled their dying worlds, and now they lived in floating stations with barely enough food or medicine to survive. The galaxy had abandoned them. When ship arrived, the hollow were suspicious. They had learned not to trust outsiders, but walked into their camp alone and unarmed. "I am," she announced to the crowd that gathered around her, "daughter of Empress Aura. My mother destroyed your worlds. She killed your families. I cannot undo what she has done, but I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life fighting to make sure she never hurts anyone again." An old hollow stepped forward. His crystal body was cracked and dim, a sign of great age and suffering. "Why should we believe you? Your people are monsters." "You're right," said. "I was born, but I choose to be something else. I choose to stand with you, not against you." She reached out with her telepathy, gently touching the minds of everyone around her. She did not force her way in. She simply opened herself up, letting them feel her sincerity, her pain, her determination. The old hollow's eyes widened. I feel truth. She means what she says. That night 200 hollow volunteers joined cause. They were not fighters. They were engineers, doctors, and scientists. But every army needs more than soldiers. Word spread. Other refugees came to her, species that had been conquered or destroyed by the Empire. Some wanted revenge. Others simply wanted a chance to fight back. Accepted them all, but she was careful. She did not want an army of hatred. She wanted an army of hope. General Sung sent supplies secretly. Human weapons, food, and medicine arrived on unmarked ships. Officially, Earth was neutral. Unofficially, many humans remembered what it felt like to be oppressed, and they wanted to help. Within 6 months, had a fleet of 50 small ships and 3,000 soldiers from a dozen different species. It was still tiny compared to the Empire's forces, but it was a start. Her first real battle came sooner than expected. Patrol ships discovered one of their hidden bases. 3 cruisers jumped into the system, guns blazing. They expected to find helpless refugees. Instead, they found. All ships hold position, she ordered calmly. Do not fire until I give the signal. They're going to destroy us, one of her captains shouted. We need to fight back. Trust me, said. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The distance was great, but she could feel the crews on those ships. She could feel their confidence, their cruelty, their belief that they were invincible. And she could feel their hidden fears, their doubts, their memories of loved ones lost, of orders they did not want to follow, of the faces of people they had killed. She grabbed those memories and pulled them to the surface. On the cruisers, soldiers suddenly stopped moving. They clutched their heads as images flooded their minds. A mother crying, a child screaming, a village burning. All the horror they had caused, all the pain they had ignored, came rushing back at once. What is happening? The commander screamed. What is she doing to us? His voice entered their minds, soft and gentle. I am showing you the truth. Look at what you have done. Look at the pain you have caused. Is this who you want to be? Is this the life you want to live? The firing stopped. One cruiser turned and fled. Another simply went dark as its crew collapsed. Only the commander's ship remained, but its weapons were silent. If you surrender, continued, you will be treated fairly. You will not be tortured or killed. But if you continue to fight for my mother, you will face justice for your crimes. The choice is yours. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the commander's voice came over the communication channel, broken and tired. We surrender. His forces cheered. They had won their first battle without losing a single ship. News of the victory spread across the galaxy. People began to whisper about a strange rebellion led by a princess who could break minds with her thoughts. They called her the Pale Flame because of her white skin and the fire in her eyes. More volunteers came, former slaves who had escaped the soldiers from neutral worlds who were tired of standing by while innocent people died. Even a few defectors who had seen the truth of their empire and could no longer stomach it. Welcomed them all, and she made sure to learn every single name. Why do you do that? Ho asked one night as she sat with a group of new recruits, listening to their stories. Do what? Spend so much time with regular soldiers. You're a commander now. You have important things to do. Looked at the young faces around her. They were scared. They were far from home. Many of them would die in the battles to come. Because they're not just soldiers, she said. They're people, and people fight harder when they know their leader sees them, when they know they matter. Ho was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. You sound like a human. I'll take that as a compliment. As her army grew, so did the threat. Empress Aura had finally noticed her daughter's rebellion. At first, she had laughed it off as a joke, the defective child playing at war. But as reports came in of lost patrols and freed planets, her amusement turned to anger. Find her, the Empress commanded. Find her and bring her to me alive. I want to watch her die slowly. But finding was not easy. Her fleet moved constantly, never staying in one place for long, and every time the thought they had cornered her, she slipped away like smoke. Meanwhile, continued to win. She freed slave colonies. She destroyed supply lines. She turned enemy soldiers into allies with nothing but the truth. The galaxy began to believe that maybe, just maybe, the impossible could happen. And in the shadows, Empress Aura watched her empire begin to crack. The daughter she had thrown away was coming for her. And she was bringing an army. The rebellion had grown beyond anything could have imagined. 200 ships, soldiers from 14 different species, entire star systems that had declared independence from the Empire. The pale flame was no longer a whisper, it was a roar. But with growth came problems. Sat in the command center of her flagship, listening as her generals argued. They were gathered around a holographic map showing an occupied planet called Noria. Millions of innocent people lived there under brutal occupation. "We should bomb their military bases from orbit," said General, a four-armed alien who had lost his to the... "It would be quick and effective." "That would kill civilians too," replied. "We need to find another way." "Civilians die in war," said coldly. "That is the nature of things. They killed millions of my people without hesitation. Why should we show them mercy?" "Because we're supposed to be different," said. "Because if we become like them, what's the point of fighting at all?" Another general, a reptilian female named, spoke up. "The princess is naive. This is war, not a children's story. We should take hostages. We should burn their supply worlds. We should make them fear us as much as they made us fear them." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. Many of its commanders had suffered terrible losses at the hands of the... They wanted revenge. They wanted blood. Felt their anger through her telepathy. It was hot and sharp like fire in her mind. She understood it. Part of her even shared it. But she knew where that path led. "I refuse," she said firmly. "We will not bomb cities. We will not take hostages. We will not become the thing we're fighting against." "Then you are weak," growled, just like everyone said. Silence fell over the room. No one had ever spoken to like that. Her guards reached for their weapons, but she stopped them with a raised hand. "Maybe I am weak," she said quietly, "but I learned something from the humans, something that has won me every battle so far." She stood and walked to the center of the room. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They're not the or the most advanced, but they've accomplished things that no one else has. Do you know why? No one answered. Because they fight for each other, not for territory, not for power, for each other. They carry their wounded even when it slows them down. They go back for prisoners even when it's dangerous. They would rather die than abandon their friends. She looked at each of her generals in turn. That's what makes them terrifying, not their weapons, not their ships, their love for each other. And that's what we're going to build here, an army that fights for something greater than revenge. Laughed bitterly. Pretty words, but words don't win wars. Then let me prove it, said. Give me one chance. Let me lead the attack on Noria my way. If I fail, you can do things your way from now on. The generals exchanged glances, finally nodded. Fine, show us this human way of war. But if you fail, many of our soldiers will die for nothing. I won't fail, said. The next day's fleet arrived at Noria. They had 50,000 soldiers on the ground and a dozen ships in orbit. By all accounts, it should have been an impossible fight. But had a plan. Instead of attacking, she sent a single shuttle down to the planet's surface. She was on it, alone. Are you insane? Ho demanded over the communication channel. They'll kill you the moment you land. No, replied. They'll try, but they won't succeed. She landed in the center of the occupied capital city. Soldiers surrounded her immediately, weapons raised. The civilians watched from their homes, terrified. Stepped out of the shuttle and raised her hands. I am not here to fight, she announced. I am here to talk. A commander approached her, laughing. "The pale flame herself, walking into our hands. The Empress will reward us greatly for your head." "Perhaps," said, "but first let me show you something." She closed her eyes and reached out with her telepathy. But instead of attacking, she projected a message, not just to the soldiers, but to every single mind on the planet. Soldiers, civilians, everyone. She showed them her memories, her childhood in chains, the cruelty of the Empress, the moment Ho freed her, the hope she had found among humans, the vision she had for a galaxy where no one had to live in fear. And then she showed them the truth about the Empire, the lies they had been told, the atrocities committed in their name, the innocent lives destroyed for nothing. The images lasted only seconds, but they felt like hours. When opened her eyes, the plaza was silent. Soldiers stood frozen, tears streaming down their faces. Many had dropped their weapons. "You don't have to follow the Empress," said gently. "You don't have to be monsters. You can choose something different. You can choose to be free." The commander stood before her, his gun still raised. His hand was shaking. In his mind, he was seeing his daughter's face, the daughter who had died in one of the Empress's purges, killed for questioning an order. "I can't," he whispered. "I've done too many terrible things. There's no going back for me." "There's always a way back," said. "The first step is choosing to take it." The gun fell from his hand, and then slowly he knelt before her. One by one, the other soldiers followed. Then the civilians came out of their homes, cheering and crying. The city had been liberated without a single shot fired. When returned to her flagship, her generals were stunned. "How did you do that?" asked. "That was impossible." "I didn't defeat them," said. "I reminded them who they used to be. Before the Empire took everything from them, people want to be good. Sometimes they just need someone to show them the way." That night, Ho found her sitting alone in the observation deck, watching the stars. "That was incredibly brave," he said, sitting beside her, "and incredibly stupid." She laughed softly. "I learned from the best. I would never do something that reckless." "Liar! You walked into an arena full of enemies and chose the one prize that would make you no money and lots of problems." He smiled. "Fair point." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then spoke again, her voice quiet. "I was scared, Ho. When I walked into that city, I was terrified. What if it didn't work? What if they just killed me? But you did it anyway." "Because I had to. Because if I'm asking people to die for me, I need to be willing to risk myself too. That's what you taught me. Leaders don't ask others to do what they won't do themselves." He looked at her with something like pride. "You've come a long way from that girl in chains." "I had help." She leaned against his shoulder, exhausted. He let her rest there. Outside, the stars burned bright and eternal, and somewhere in the darkness, the Empress was watching. Her empire was crumbling, and she finally understood that her discarded daughter was not weak at all. She was the most dangerous enemy the Empress had ever faced. The final battle had come. Stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the grow larger on the. It was a dark planet, covered in metal cities and military bases. This was where the Empress ruled. This was where the Empire had been born. And this was where it would die. Her fleet had grown to 500 ships. Behind her stood soldiers from 20 different species, millions of beings united by a single purpose. Every world the Empire had ever conquered had sent fighters. Every species that had suffered under cruelty wanted to see it end. "All ships reporting ready," Jinai announced from the pilot's station. "The enemy fleet is moving to intercept. They outnumber us 3-1. Nodded calmly. "Expected. What about the ground forces?" "The Empress has activated her slave armies. She's also releasing the bioweapons we detected earlier. Chemical agents designed to kill non-species." A murmur of fear went through the bridge crew. The Empress was desperate, and desperate people did terrible things. Then we'll need to move fast, said, before she can use those weapons on civilian populations. She turned to Ho, who stood beside her in full battle armor. Are you ready? Born ready, he replied. Though I have to admit, storming an enemy capital wasn't exactly on my retirement plan. You can retire after we win. If we win. When corrected, when we win. The battle began. Space lit up with weapons fire as the two fleets collided. Ships exploded like fireworks against the darkness. Fighters swarmed between the larger vessels, their tiny forms dancing through the chaos. Directed the battle from her bridge, her telepathy reaching out to coordinate with her captains. She could feel the fear and courage of her soldiers, the determination of her commanders, the desperation of the enemy. She used it all, adjusting her strategy in real time based on what she sensed. Enemy flagship is breaking through our left flank, Jinai reported. Let them, said. Have the 3rd Division pretend to retreat, draw them into the asteroid field. That's a trap. It will be. An hour later, the enemy flagship was disabled, caught between hidden ships and drifting rocks. Its commander surrendered rather than die for a losing cause. The tide of battle slowly turned. One by one, ships fell or fled. The slave armies on the ground, seeing their masters losing, began to turn against their controllers. Years of suppressed rage exploded as the oppressed finally had a chance to fight back. By nightfall, forces had broken through to the landing ships descended through the atmosphere, carrying soldiers to the surface. Ho led the assault personally, fighting through the streets of the capital city toward the Imperial Palace. Followed close behind, protected by a guard of human volunteers. She could have stayed on the ship where it was safe, but that was not the kind of leader she was. The palace is heavily defended, Ho reported through his communicator. The Empress has her personal guard surrounding the throne room, at least 100 soldiers. Can you get me inside? That's suicide. Can you get me inside? A pause, then, yes, but you're not going alone. They fought their way through the palace gates. Ho cut through enemy soldiers with terrifying efficiency, his human strength and speed shocking even the elite guards. Ho-Jin and Sung-Min provided covering fire while Jinai flew overhead, strafing enemy positions with her fighter. When they reached the throne room doors, stopped. Wait here, she said. Not a chance, Ho replied. Please, this is something I need to do alone. He looked into her eyes and saw something he had never seen before. Certainty, peace. I'll be right outside, he said finally, if you need me. I know. She pushed open the doors and walked into the throne room. It was exactly as she remembered from her childhood. Cold black walls, a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow, and at the far end, on a throne made of bones and metal, sat Empress Aura. Her mother looked older, thinner. The war had taken its toll, but her black eyes still held the same cruelty that remembered. So, the Empress said, her voice echoing through the empty room. The defect returns. I must admit, I underestimated you. You underestimated a lot of things, Mother. Walked forward slowly, her footsteps the only sound in the silence. I've thought about this moment for years, she continued. What I would say to you, what I would do. For a long time I wanted to hurt you, the way you hurt me. Then do it, the Empress hissed. Kill me, take your revenge, prove that you're just as much of a monster as I am. Stopped in front of the throne. She looked up at the creature who had given her life and then spent years trying to destroy it. And she felt nothing but sadness. No, said quietly, I'm not going to kill you. She reached out and placed her hand on her mother's forehead. The Empress tried to pull away, but she was too weak. Through her telepathy, showed her mother something unexpected. Not hatred, not vengeance, not the memories of pain and suffering. She showed her pity. Showed the Empress the truth of her own life, the loneliness, the paranoia, the endless hunger for power that had consumed everything good in her. She showed her the billions of lives destroyed by her choices, the families torn apart, the civilizations reduced to ash. And she showed her what she could have had: a daughter who loved her, an empire built on cooperation instead of fear, a legacy of hope instead of horror. The Empress screamed. It was not a scream of physical pain, but something deeper. For the first time in her life, she was forced to see herself clearly, to understand the monster she had become. "You never understood strength, Mother," said softly. "You thought it meant causing pain, but true strength is surviving pain and choosing not to pass it on." The Empress collapsed from her throne, clutching her head. Tears, actual tears, streamed down her face. "Stop," she begged. "Please stop." "It's over," said. "Your empire is finished. Your armies are defeated. You will stand trial for your crimes, and you will spend the rest of your life facing the truth of what you've done." She turned and walked toward the door, leaving her mother sobbing on the cold floor. Ho was waiting outside. He looked at her with concern. "Are you okay?" "I think so," said. "For the first time in my life, I think I really am." Behind her, the greatest tyrant the galaxy had ever known lay broken and weeping, not from torture, not from violence, from something far more devastating. The truth: 1 year had passed since the fall of the Empire. The galaxy was still healing. Refugee camps were slowly becoming cities. Destroyed worlds were being rebuilt. Species that had been enemies for generations were learning to work together. It was messy and difficult, but it was happening. And at the center of it all stood. She walked through the gardens of the new capital city, a neutral world chosen by representatives from 100 different species. The buildings here were not made of bone and metal like the old palaces. They were made of glass and light, designed to show that the new government had nothing to hide. "Guardian," a voice called out. She turned to see a group of children running toward her. They were from different species, hollow, human, and others she did not immediately recognize. They laughed as they surrounded her, their small faces full of joy. "Will you tell us a story?" asked a small hollow girl, her crystal body shimmering in the sunlight. Smiled and knelt down to their level. "What kind of story do you want to hear?" "Tell us about the human," shouted a boy, "the one who saved you." "Ah," said, "that's my favorite story." She gathered the children around her and began to speak. She told them about a girl who was born weak and broken, thrown away by her own mother. She told them about an arena filled with blood and how a human warrior chose the one prize that no one else wanted. She told them about kindness and patience, and how the smallest acts of love could change the entire universe. The children listened with wide eyes. When she finished, the hollow girl spoke up again. "Is the human still your friend?" "He's my best friend," said. "He's the reason I became who I am." "Will we get to meet him?" "Maybe someday. He's very busy these days." That was not entirely true. Ho had been offered command of the entire combined fleet of the Free Compact, the new government that had replaced the Empire. He had refused. "I didn't fight so I could sit on another throne," he had told General Sung. "I fought so she could build something worth protecting." Instead, he had returned to Earth and opened a small restaurant in Seoul. He cooked noodles and taught self-defense to children from poor neighborhoods. He was happier than he had ever been. Visited him whenever she could, which was not often. Her responsibilities as guardian kept her traveling across the galaxy, settling disputes and ensuring that the peace held. But she always found time to sit in his little restaurant, eating noodles and talking about nothing important. Those were the best moments of her life. After the children left, walked to the Hall of Memory, a great building that held records of everyone who had died in the war against the Empire. She came here every week to pay her respects. Inside, she found waiting for her. The reptilian general had become one of her closest advisors, though they still disagreed about many things. The vote is complete, said. The Free Compact officially recognizes the Hollow's right to reclaim their reconstruction begins next month. Nodded. Good. What else? There's a trade dispute between the outer colonies and the core worlds. Nothing serious, but they want your input. I'll look at it tomorrow. Hesitated. There's also a message from the prison station. Your mother is asking to see you. Was silent for a long moment. Empress Aura had been sentenced to life imprisonment, not execution, despite demands from many species. Had insisted on mercy, even for her. Tell her no, said finally. I've said everything I need to say. Understood. Later that evening, stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Lights glittered below like a sea of stars. Somewhere out there, people were having dinner with their families. Children were going to sleep without fear. Lovers were walking together under the moonlight. This was what she had fought for. Not power, not revenge, just the simple freedom to live without terror. Her communicator buzzed. Ho's face appeared on the screen. Hey, he said, you look tired. I am tired, she admitted, but it's a good kind of tired. I made your favorite noodles today, saved you a bowl. I might be able to visit next week. I'll hold you to that. They talked for an hour about small things, the weather on Earth, a funny customer at the restaurant, a new recipe Ho was trying. It was meaningless conversation and treasured every second of it. When they finally said goodbye, she felt a warmth in her chest that she had learned to recognize. Love. Not the desperate, hungry love of stories, something quieter, deeper, the kind of love that grew over years of shared struggle and trust. She had never told him how she felt. Maybe she never would, but she knew that he understood. Some things did not need words. 100 years later, historians would write about the Free Compact. They would call her the greatest leader in galactic history. They would analyze her strategies, study her speeches, and debate the secrets of her success. But they would always come back to the same conclusion. A human had seen her worth when no one else did. He had shown her what love meant, what strength truly was, what it looked like to fight for something greater than yourself. And she had spent her entire life proving that his faith was not misplaced. On the anniversary of the Empire's fall, a statue was unveiled in the capital city. It showed a tall human warrior standing beside a small alien princess. They were not holding weapons. They were not posed in victory. They were simply standing together, side by side, equals. The inscription at the base read, "True strength is not measured by the enemies you defeat, but by the people you lift up." Was there for the unveiling. She stood in the crowd with Ho, both of them much older now. His hair was gray. Her pale skin had grown even more translucent with age, but their eyes were still bright. "That statue makes me look too heroic," Ho muttered. "It makes me look too short," replied. "You are short. And you're old." They smiled at each other. Around them, the crowd cheered. Children waved flags bearing the symbol of the Free Compact, a pale flame against a dark sky. Veterans of the war stood at attention, tears in their eyes. And somewhere in the vast universe, countless beings lived in peace because two broken people had found each other in an arena of chains. That was the story of the pale flame. Not a story of war, though there was war. Not a story of revenge, though there was justice. A story of love, simple, stubborn human love. The kind that could change the galaxy.